Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been a fantastic day. I'm going to start off by saying something that I don't think is going to shock you, but here we go. I'm going to talk about goal setting. I'm going to I'm going to tell you my story, which I'm going to tell you my story, which is a challenge that I faced as a young kid. It taught me the importance and the value of goal setting. And it's a lesson that stayed with me my entire life. It's a lesson that I didn't necessarily want to learn, but I had to learn it. While I'm talking, I'd really appreciate it if you would think about your own life, challenges you faced, and how you overcame those challenges. In my opinion, life's challenges are a lot like fingerprints. We all have them. We can relate to each other because we know what it's like to live with them, but each one's slightly different, making it unique to each one of us as individuals. Huh? How about that line? I was so psyched when I came up with that line. I was like, yes, I cannot wait to share that, hit them with that one. But that's also the bar of cleverness, so it's not going to get any more or less clever. So that's where we are with this. My story starts when I'm 12 years old. I'm on vacation in Washington, D.C. with my family. We were walking to the Lincoln Memorial, and it's something that I'll never forget. Lincoln was about 400 yards straight ahead of me. The reflection pond was to my left. He's stoically sitting on his chair. And as a family, we're walking, and boom, out of nowhere, I collapsed. I came to a few minutes later on a park bench. And what had happened, my dad had scooped me up, carried me over to the bench, and I came to with, looks of concern on my mom, dad, and sister's faces. But I rested, rehydrated, and finished up with vacation. So then fast forward a couple of weeks. I'm back home in Pittsburgh, and I'm playing baseball, which is something that I love to do. And I hit the perfect double. And if you've ever played baseball or softball or golf or maybe even cricket, you know what I'm talking about when I say I felt like $1,000,000. I hit the ball perfectly off the bat, and I put the bat down, and I started to run to first base. Now, as I'm running to first base, I can clearly remember saying to myself, man, first base seems really far away. And by the time I got to away, boom, I collapsed again. This time I woke up laying on the field, and I was looking at a circle of coaches, friends, family members, and everyone was all really, really concerned. At that point, my parents just sort of scooped me up and said, we're getting an MRI. We're getting this checked out. Now, I will tell you the funniest description of this that I've ever heard is from one of my best friends who was there, and he's still a great friend of mine today. While I'm thinking to myself, man, it feels like first base is really far away, what's happening is my legs were freaking out. They were tweaking out, going every which way. And he described it as, if you've ever seen the cartoon Bambi, when the baby deer is trying to walk on ice, that's what my legs looked like. So the background is, and what you don't know up to this point, is that I was born with spina bifida, which is a birth defect that has 3 levels in terms of severity. Mine is the middle tier, which is a tumor on the spine. I would give you the medical term for it, but honestly, with my Pittsburghese, I struggle with saying down. I want to say down, go downtown. So I butcher it and mispronounce it big time. But the point is, I had a tumor on my spine. And at 11 days old, it was removed. And I walked out of the surgery, so to speak. I was completely able-bodied as a kid. I excelled in sports, specifically baseball, basketball, and hockey. Then at 12, we get the MRI. And the MRI picked up something that was our biggest fear, and that is that my tumor grew back. This time, it had to be removed again, and the doctors gave me a 97% chance of walking out of the surgery the way I walked into it. I hate to give it away, but you're looking at a 3%er. I'm one of the 3% in the world that year that walked in and wheeled out. Now, the first memory I have after waking up from surgery was first the indescribable amount of pain. Just unbelievable. Second, I was paralyzed from the chest down. At that point, I could blink and I could talk. And that was basically my range of motion. The first visual that I had was my sister. She was at the foot of my bed at the hospital, holding my foot, crying. And I'll never forget it because she was holding my foot. I could see her holding my foot, but I couldn't feel it. And that's when I said, oh man, things have gotten weird. So at that point, I passed out again. I was heavily medicated, so I was in and out of consciousness for the next couple of days. So then a few days later, I came to, in the same state in terms of paralysis and pain. And I looked at my mom, and I said to her, I'm going to be at baseball tryouts. This is January, tryouts are in April. At this point, I'm saying this to her because I'm already experiencing a million things that are out of my control. And when you go through that pain, when you go through that type of experience, you know your life has changed. There was no doubt in my mind laying there that my life had done a 180. But the thing that I could control is how I was going to live my new life from that day forward. And I was going to continue to live it the way I saw fit. And baseball was my life at that point. So without skipping a beat and without being any sort of negative, my mom looked at me and said, we have to make a plan. And my plan was actually a series of goals. And I felt very confident that if I would hit these goals by April, I would be at tryouts. And to give you an example, my first goal was to sit up in 4 days. I tell you this for a couple of reasons. First, if not every time, the majority of the time, we have to start from square one. We have to start from the very basic step to get to our ultimate goal. Sitting up certainly wasn't changing the world. It certainly wasn't lighting the world on fire, but it was a big step in my progress, in my achieving my ultimate goal. So I gave myself 4 days, and after 3 days of sort of being moved around by therapists, understanding what real pain is and what pain you can live with and can't live with, I sat up. In 3 days, I beat my 4-day goal. This was a big deal. We celebrated. And I say that for a reason. We need to celebrate our wins along the way, no matter how small or large, because by doing that simple act of celebrating, we're keeping ourselves motivated. My second big goal in this experience was to get out of bed. And believe me, after selling for FedEx for 8 years, I can tell you there were plenty of days I wished I hadn't set that goal. CHT, EPRS, crazy customers. Are you kidding me? Why did I get out of bed? But I did. I got out of bed. and how I got out of bed was a team effort with my family. My dad built a chin-up bar that fit over my hospital bed. And every day, my parents and my sister would come to visit me. They would lift me up. And they would literally lift me. And then one day, my arms started catching. My arms were doing it. And I was lifting myself. It was painful. It was awkward. It was weird. And I could get my upper body up, but I was still understanding my lower body and what sort of mobility I had. So my legs would get caught in the sheets. And again, it was very awkward and uncomfortable. And I tell you that because I think that's a good thing. I think while we're going through our process, we need to feel uncomfortable. We need to get shaken up and get out of our comfort zone. And then lastly was physical therapy. And I primarily was swimming for physical therapy. And I think that's an example of you just have to do the work. You just have to grind it out and get the work done. So, long story short, I made the team. I went from being an all-star pitcher to, as you can see, a catcher. I could kneel behind the plate with no problem, and I built my legs up to a point where I could stand and I could swing the bat I'd fall every time after I swung. I'd like to say I had, majority of the time, I had hits, but I really didn't. I'd swing the bat, I'd fall, and then I had a pinch runner who was even with me at first base, and he would take off for me. That was pretty sweet because we always had the fastest kid run for me, so that was awesome. I would just bunt, and he would take off. But the point is there, I thought baseball was going to be a part of my life forever. I was going to play in college. I was going to play in the pros. If I didn't make the pros, I was going to play in a men's league. But after playing 2 seasons and still having my hometown record for getting hit by pitches in a season, problem was I could stand there, but I couldn't get out of the way. So if it was an inside fastball, I was like, oh no, oh no. I got beamed 27 times in 1 year. It was ridiculous. But because of that, I knew baseball was not a long-term fit for me. Life threw me a curveball, and I had to readjust and reset and adapt my goals. So my new goal was to have an equal playing field. I was tired of being the only disabled person competing against nothing but able-bodied people. You walkers, you stinking walkers. But so while I'm playing baseball, my parents, myself, my sister, we researched and found the Paralympics and the Paralympic movement. Now, this sounded amazing to me. Represent our country, see the world, compete at the highest levels, and it's an equal playing field. I'm competing against people of my ability. This sounded fantastic. The only problem was I didn't have a sport to compete in. So my mind went to swimming. I'd never been on a swim team. I'd never been to a swim meet. I'd never been to a swim practice. But I had a goal that I was going to join the national swim team and represent our country. Crazy to say it out loud as an adult, but in my mind, it made perfect sense at the time. So my first order of business to accomplishing my goal of getting on the national team was to become a member of U.S. Swimming. And to do that, you have to join a local sanctioned club. So I tried out for the club team, and guess what? I didn't make it. I didn't make it. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. But I didn't make it. So I'm thinking to myself, man, this goal is going to be a lot harder than I thought. So I asked the coach what I needed to work on. He gave me a list. I came back the next year stronger, better, and I made the team. Once I was on the team, I had goals to get to the Paralympics. I had to qualify for regionals, from regionals to nationals, from nationals to time trials. And then after time trials, I was selected to be a member of the 96 Paralympic team. Now, this was an amazing experience, but it was held in Atlanta. So much for seeing the world. So what the heck? I'm in Atlanta all the time. This is crazy. So, but nonetheless, it was an amazing experience. And Atlanta's a great town. Don't get me wrong, Hotlanta. I'm sorry. But it was an amazing experience, but I was young. I was just having fun, and I didn't medal. So my next goal was to medal for our country. So for the next 2 years, I followed the same exact process, and I was fortunate enough to be selected again. And in '98, I went to Christchurch, New Zealand, as a member of the United States Disabled National Swim Team. And there, I'm proud to say that I earned a bronze medal in the 100 breaststroke. Thanks. Thanks, guys. Unfortunately, that was 20 years and about 15 pounds ago, but still, great experience. So I went through the same process, and I earned the medal. The best experience of that was my roommate during our time. Oh, did I mention it was in New Zealand? Okay, cool. So during my time there, we were there for about a month. My roommate ended up winning the gold. So it was our national anthem, which was so amazing. And then I came home to college scholarship offers, partial and full rides. I came back, and Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood invited me on, and I did a couple episodes on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. The point is, if life never threw me that curveball, and if I wasn't willing, open, and able to adapt and reset my goals, I would have never found or experienced that entire avenue of life that took me from New Zealand to college to Mr. Rogers. We have to be open to what life gives us, and we need to reset our goals based on what life is giving us. So fast forward to FedEx. I started in BSI, or inside sales, in the Pittsburgh office where, as you know, I was born and raised. After 3.5 years and earning 2 President's Clubs, I approached management with the goal of field sales. Management, who was management at the time, expressed to me the challenges that I would face, and I demonstrated to them that those were not a big deal and that I'm going to reach my goal of field sales. So I fortunately and happily accepted a promotion and transitioned to Los Angeles. And while I was in Los Angeles, I worked as a business development account executive and a market development sales executive. While I was in LA, I covered what I consider to be 2 of the best territories in this company. Maybe not performance-wise, but geographically. Again, a guy coming from Pittsburgh, I had Beverly Hills. Once a month, I would wheel up and down Rodeo as my sales calls. They were legit sales calls. Don't get me wrong. I had Culver City. I had Sony Studios in Culver City. I was on the lot twice a month. They had anywhere from 20 to 40 accounts, depending on what productions were going on. Jeopardy was our mainstay account there. Alex Trebek, I guess, ships golf clubs all over the world. Cool things like within that, though. Happy Madison, which is Adam Sandler's production company. They had a bunch of accounts with us. And we're doing good business because during my tenure there, they were filming a lot. I had a couple interactions with Adam Sandler. I had Brentwood. I had Westwood. I had Santa Monica. I was living in Santa Monica. I had the perfect life in LA. And then life threw me another curveball. You see, I had a territory that I considered to be a territory that we should have someone in that's tall, dark, and handsome, or that's beautiful and intelligent, not short, light, and wheeling. So I was very honored. I was very proud to have this territory. I was very protective of it, and I didn't want to show weakness. Now, the curveball that I talk about that LA threw me was actually self-induced. And what I mean by that is, while I was there, I, once a month, would go to my loading docks. I would go to my warehouses. I would go to my customers that weren't accessible. And this was my one day a month where I knew I was going to be crawling. What I mean by that is I would wear my old work clothes that were at the end of the closet that I was about to throw away. I would bring my old wheelchair. And again, these were the days I knew I was going to crawl. These customers weren't accessible. We needed to get to them. And I wasn't asking them to put in an elevator. I'd actually told a few of them that I would prefer if they'd keep shipping as opposed to put in an elevator. I don't know how ethical that is, but we got all the business. So I had a system down. If a warehouse or a loading dock had 10 stairs or less, I would transfer out of my chair, and I would sit on the stair. I had about 4 or 5 stairs up. I'd hold onto the railing. I'd grab my chair. I'd flip it over my head, and it would land. It would make a boom. I'd crawl up to my chair, and I'd go and do my business. When the chair would boom, sometimes people would come and say, oh, let me help you. But then it got to a point where people would hear the boom and say, oh, FedEx is here. So I didn't have much sympathy from them. So the customers that had 10 stairs or more, my system was I would get out of my chair, I would transfer to the first chair or to the first stair, and I would turn my chair around so it was facing me. And I would hold on to my foot plate, and I would walk my chair up as I would as I was butt crawling or scooting up each stair. Now, before you give me credit or any sort of credit for that, I have to be honest with you guys. These were skills that I learned in college, getting around my fraternity house, getting to girlfriends that didn't have elevators in their apartments. So I found it as a good way to transfer the skills I learned in college into my career. I don't tell you this story because I thought that I was going to be here talking to you one day. I tell you this story because I screwed up. I had a lifetime of following my goals, following my strict plan of setting goals, communicating them, having a support system, having a community, readjusting when life came at me. But this time, I was so paranoid about showing a weakness, I didn't communicate. I didn't let my managers know. I didn't let my coworkers know. I didn't let my director know. They all would have worked with me. We all would have figured something out. But I was in my own head that I couldn't show weakness, that I was proving from Pittsburgh to LA that people in wheelchairs can be successful FedEx field sales executives. Because, I mean, in LA and now, I haven't seen too many of us wheeling around. So that was sort of my badge of honor. And it was wrong. If I would have had those communications, I may possibly still be in LA. You see, by the end of my tenure, I couldn't lift my right hand over my head anymore. I'd completely hurt myself achieving the goal that I wanted to achieve. So I think we need to be conscious and aware of that. So I ask you to set goals. I ask you to communicate them and to build a support network so that you don't do what I did. Start small, work your way up. Celebrate each win along the way. When life comes at you, reset and readjust your goals. And lastly, think creatively. Don't let the loading docks in your life stop you. Thank you all very much.